Hello, I'm Farida Nabourema. I am a political activist from Togo. I became interested in Bitcoin about 5 years ago when I started looking for alternatives to make it easier to send money to my country, Togo, and without really facing government scrutiny, considering we are activists working to bring an end to the existing regime that has been ruling the country for almost 6 decades. So my involvement in Bitcoin, I always describe as being initially accidental. Initially, it was about finding a solution that was rapid, that was efficient and fast. And then eventually I got to learn more about Bitcoin and its various user cases, but most specifically its philosophy. And that is when I really embraced it and I became a Bitcoiner. Well, it intersects in many ways. First of all, Bitcoin was built on the idea of promoting self-sovereignty and also ending control over people's finances. It was built on the whole idea of financial freedom. So to some extent, it's even a social justice project. It aims to give people their financial and monetary agency back. When it comes to human rights activism, Bitcoin contributes in many ways in terms of supporting human rights activists that are at risk, that are unable to use traditional financial system to be able to raise funds or have access to resources. You know, under many authoritarian governments, one of the biggest tool they use against the people, especially the dissidents, is the financial one. They weaponize money against citizens. And when they see dissidents organizing against them, they try to find way to suffocate them financially. Local civil society groups, non-profit organizations, and opposition parties in many countries have seen their bank accounts completely blocked by the government. Activists, opposition leaders have seen their bank accounts closed. People have lost their jobs, unable to work, or they are unable to receive money or to access their own money. So the weaponization of financial institutions against citizens, especially under authoritarian settings, when they know that the ruling government controls all the state institutions, including the judiciary, it becomes almost impossible for people to wage resistance against such governments and regimes. So Bitcoin makes it easier to counter those censorships and those controls that those governments exercise over citizens. So for human rights activists, it's a lifeline. It can help them avoid scrutiny. It can also help them counter censorship and also give them opportunities beyond the country in which they are fighting. Bitcoin makes it easier to move money. It's not anonymous, but it is private. It gives an extra layer of privacy. It also makes it easier to bypass government censorship and control, especially in countries that are ruled by authoritarian regimes. Bitcoin also helps raise funds outside of your borders without having to face the hurdles of raising in some currencies and finding ways to channel it back to your movement. There are countries where activists have been able to raise funds very rapidly in emergency situations, thanks to Bitcoin, because at that moment banks were closed and there were no other avenue for them to be able to access money and to raise resources. So Bitcoin can be a lifeline to support people in situations like that when they are unable to access traditional banking systems. And sometimes even when they can access traditional banking system, Bitcoin tends to be faster and a more effective and cheaper way to move money today. Especially using the Lightning Network, it costs far less than to send remittances. And many activists can actually benefit from reducing the excessive fees that they pay when they have to send or receive money, especially money that is donated to the cause that they are fighting for. I wouldn't say that I have faced a challenge, particularly as a human rights activist who also use Bitcoin. There are challenges to using Bitcoin in certain parts of the world, depending. Sometimes you have issues such as lack of internet access. There are solutions that are being built all over the continent to make those easier. You also have issues with sometimes finding reliable people that you can trade with when you need the Bitcoin urgently, or you need to convert it to a local currency. But those are setbacks that I know could be challenging at times, but they could also be solved. I wouldn't particularly say that it has those challenges that are very technical have anything to do with human rights activism per se. I'm the founder of the Africa Bitcoin Conference, and I think that conference alone has played a big role in pushing for knowledge of and adoption of Bitcoin on the African continent. It has become a gathering point for Bitcoiners from all over the continent and beyond. And seeing amazing talents in the sector, people who are very passionate about Bitcoin, developers, traders, entrepreneurs, even activists come together to think about how to make money more accessible to all is a very empowering and a very humbling experience. So that through that initiative, we have been trying to build a bridge among Bitcoiners from Africa and outside of Africa to try to be able to direct more investment that will help African entrepreneurs being able to scale their Bitcoin ventures, and also for us to develop the infrastructures we need to respond to the need of Africans using Bitcoin. Because at the end of the day, we are still the fastest adopting, we have the fastest adoption rate in the world. I think those are two separate things, honestly. I am an activist against an authoritarian regime. It's very wild fighting authoritarian governments, and I wouldn't lie about it. It's very wild. It's very crazy. The level of surveillance that you face, the level of intimidation, abuse, persecution, the trauma that you deal with as a result of other people being hurt and abused is real. Bitcoin advocacy is actually not that violent, honestly. It is not violent at all. I find it far easier, more suiting, less dangerous, less complicated. And at the end of the day, people come to us more than we go to them. They come to us because they have heard about it and they want to know more about the work we are doing, and they want to see how Bitcoin can also improve their lives and their conditions. So we have, together with communities, set up initiatives such as the Kisao project in Togo, for example, where we are providing Bitcoin micro credits to farmers so that they can now improve their farming by investing that money into acquiring fertilizers and better seeds, because the funding system in our countries make it almost impossible for farmers that are in their vast majority, more than 90% unbanked, to be able to access funding to improve their agricultural yield. The average farmer in a country like China, for example, has up to 20 times more yield per acre of land than the African farmer, because we don't use our fertilizers, and because our farmers cannot access resources to purchase those fertilizers and use as much as they actually need. In order for us to be able to achieve food security on this continent, we have to be able to invest in those who feed us, and those are the farmers, and they unfortunately are the most forgotten by financial institutions. And with Bitcoin, we're trying to rectify that. We are starting at a very small scale, but we really hope that eventually this will grow into something bigger and something more impactful. So I will say that doing Bitcoin advocacy, sometimes you have people who are skeptical, but then the skepticism comes from a lack of information and a lot of disinformation in the sector. So when you address those disinformations and you provide more information, people are actually very, very keen to wanting to know more and to be involved, because at the end of the day, everybody wants to build wealth. Everybody wants to save money. Everybody wants to get out of poverty for those who are poor, and everybody wants better opportunities. And because Bitcoin provides those, it's a natural thing for people to gear towards it, especially when they understand how it works and how it can benefit them. The advice is simple. The information is out there. Invest a lot of time in learning about Bitcoin and how it works. You have a lot of knowledge resources online. You can expand your knowledge, but don't fall into reading the myths about all the dangers of Bitcoin without really trying to understand Bitcoin first. Go to the source of the information to know what it is, to understand what it is and how it works before you can make a mind of your own and decide if it is good for you or not. And I believe that once you understand what it is and how it works, you will definitely know it is useful, and you will see ways that it can improve the work you're doing and it can support you in your work. A very simple approach that I have is to educate them, bring knowledge and information to them. But here's the thing, when people are resisting acquiring new knowledge, you can force them. And at the end of the day, it's a personal choice. And one thing I always say is that people who really need Bitcoin, they are more open to learning about it. Why? Because they are already stuck in the existing situation. Maybe they don't have bank accounts, or maybe they can't access their bank accounts, or they need to move money very quickly and they can't, and they're spending too much money moving money, or they want to send payments to a certain country or people and they're stuck. People who need it don't need to be convinced about it because it's their only alternative. So those who usually are very skeptical about it tends to be the ones that need it the less because they have options. And when you have options and your options are working for you, then you don't have to force yourself into trying something new. But the reality is that whether they embrace it now or choose to do it later, eventually it's going to catch up with them. And I always say, better start early than late. Those who start engaging now and those who start learning now will always have an advantage over those who start very late. My aspiration is to see a world that is less unequal, a world where people live in dignity, people have control over their lives, people have choices and they are not persecuted for their choices, a world where people can actually afford to live happy, to access basic needs, a world where there is no financial, political, economic, social segregation. The world we live in today, some people are using money that is very powerful because their nations manage to build economic systems that they are imposing on the rest of the world. So they benefit from that, whether they want to acknowledge it or not. They benefit from using such powerful currencies. And some of us inherited currencies that were imposed on us through colonialism, and there is nothing we can do about it other than fight and resist and lose time, resources, money, energy in the process. So I want that to come to an end. And I think Bitcoin is money that does not discriminate, that does not segregate. It wasn't built specifically for a specific group of people. It wasn't built just to help a certain group of people take advantage of others. So the fact that its creation in itself is not geared toward exploitation is very unique. And I hope that it can help us move forward in our struggle for equality and justice. Thank you.
Proudly brought to you by Bitcoin Dada.